Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm an overly enthusiastic Ethan. I'm here with equally enthusiastic Pete. Pete, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Everything is good. We have a big Netflix-centric episode today.
Yep. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice how this is going to go.
You sound so resigned.
This is Netflix at their very usual.
Netflixian. Without further ado, let's dive into it. We are going to review the recently released Heart of Stone, starring Gal Gadot and Jamie Dornan.
Yeah. This is the last or the second to the last of the movies that were greenlit in the last 3 or 4 years from Netflix that were like these big splashy movies that Netflix had signed on. And that happened obviously well before the current streaming crisis, right? And I call that the streaming crisis because I think every streaming platform has basically faced their day of reckoning when it comes to unfettered spending. And I think this movie is emblematic of that.
Before we dive in, because I think we're going to have some pointed comments, let's say one thing to compliment Netflix. Okay. Let's give them credit that they have gone in big and they have gone in bold.
Okay. I mean, that's a compliment.
It is
I definitely agree on the big and bold.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a compliment, but that is definitely true.
So to put this movie in context, if you have seen Gray Man, if you have seen Red Notice, you will understand the type of film this is and the positioning of the film this is, which is, back to my comment, it is big and splashy. So we give Netflix a little bit of acknowledgement and credit for doing that. Gal Gadot is a big name. She was in Red Notice as well. Jamie Dornan, to my surprise, has really redeemed himself after these Christian Grey, 50 Shades of Grey movies. He's now become, I think, quite a decent, reliable, compelling actor. The rest of the cast of this movie is what? Good for you? Okay for you? Great for you?
Almost inconsequential, to be honest. The movie has made a bigger splash than I expected it to in India. And then it dawned on me why. It's because the main antagonist is Alia Bhatt, who is a famous actress here. And so it's rare for my mother and my sister to both make a comment about
Mom Index,
a Netflix special movie. And they both did. And I think it's primarily because Alia Bhatt is on there. And obviously, Netflix India has gone into overdrive to kind of market this as Amazon did with Priyanka Chopra and Citadel. Netflix has done the same with Alia Bhatt in Heart of Stone. So Amazon Prime, I mean, just to give you an example of how far they went, they tied up with, I think, Cadbury, or maybe not Cadbury, but one of the local chocolate brands here. And they have a series of biscuits, which were rebranded with Citadel, like these chocolate cookies. And there's a huge picture of Priyanka Chopra and Richard Madden on there promoting Citadel in supermarkets on boxes of these chocolate cookies.
Can you buy one? Buy one, please.
All right, I'll buy a box or two.
Do it show and tell for our next. I want to see the Citadel-inspired chocolate box with Richard Madden's face on it.
Yep. I mean, it's a testament to how poorly that series is done.
You can still find them.
You can still buy them in this grocery store.
Check the expiration date. All right. Do you want to give the premise of Heart of Stone?
Absolutely. So, the movie is a spy thriller, and it's one of those super flashy, modern, high budget, high flying thrillers.
Yep.
Think Red Notice, think Citadel, a little bit like the Atom Project, these kinds of movies, right? The premise is that Gal Gadot is working for MI6.
She's not British, by the way.
Even though she's very clearly not English, British, doesn't even have an accent, nothing. She doesn't try to hide anything. Weird, but we'll overlook that. She's working for MI6, and she's supposed to be like this semi-clumsy, semi-inept computer expert, right? Like the hacker.
Right.
Like the person who
don't get out of the van.
Who never supposed to get out of the van. She's like Luther in the MI movies. Fine, no problem. The movie opens on a mission in, I guess, the Italian Alps.
They're in the Alps.
And the idea is that they're supposed to extract a weapons dealer. Mm-hmm. And the mission goes awry because a counter hacker is on site and preventing Gal Gadot from doing her work. And that counter hacker is Aliyah Bhatt. Unlike other counter hackers, she makes her presence well known to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Which was also stupid. Fine. And then we learn mid-mission that, surprise, surprise, plot twist, Gal Gadot's not actually a bumbling agent who's a computer specialist. She's actually a super agent working for another double secret agency called the Charter.
So just to keep score at home, the Charter is more secret than MI6, and her allegiance is to the Charter, and her cover is MI6.
Correct. So the Charter has implanted her as a mole in MI6, and the Charter is like one of these other international spy agencies which has no allegiance to anyone else. It's exactly like Citadel. And what makes the Charter really cool and what makes the Charter work is that they are led, or not led, but they're directed by a quantum computer / artificial intelligence known as the Heart. And the Heart is basically this computer that's able to analyze probability percentages on any given situation.
It's Mission Impossible.
It's like Mission Impossible. Her handler is basically there on like their own comm system through her like earpiece and contact lens, and the contact lens, I will say, is pretty cool. It's got like an augmented reality heads-up display. Yeah. But the idea is that it's constantly evaluating the probability of success or failure of the mission. And it updates the best possible course of action to reflect the best odds of winning the mission. She pretends to fall down so that she gets separated from the MI6 agents. They split up, and when they're split up, she, starts paragliding down this mountain. She's taking out like dozens upon dozens of bad guys on her own. She's hiding bodies before anyone can find out. And then she gets back up to the mountain and she pretends like, tee-hee, I was hiding in a bathroom because I was too scared. There's that one conspiracy theorist on their own MI6 team who's like, oh, the Charter exists, but no one can prove it, blah, blah, blah. No problem. Next mission they go on, she's searching for the hacker. They've got a new lead on the hacker, and they've got a new lead because the hacker basically talks to her, which I thought was also stupid. They go to Portugal, and in Portugal, we find out that Jamie Dornan is actually a bad guy, and he betrays the entire MI6 squad, and that's where she has to kind of come out and be like, well, I'm a Charter agent. So it's like a double cross.
What a failure for the Heart.
Honestly.
I mean, the Heart's actually failed now a few times.
Yeah. I mean, you and I would have predicted this, and we are not artificial intelligence with quantum level processing. So I feel like this computer should have thought about that.
Yeah.
Jamie Dornan's bad guy group is also like the evil version of the Charter. They're also an international spy agency that's not affiliated with anyone, but their mission is evil. He's the one who's actually working with Aliyah Bhatt's character, and they're trying to steal the Heart from the Charter. So it's basically spy versus spy. Again, this is exactly like Citadel all over again, where you have two competing international spy agencies fighting against each other.
It is Citadel. It's also very similar. I can't get Mission Impossible out of my head because the whole point of Mission Impossible is this AI, right?
Yes.
And everyone wants to control the AI because
Yes.
either for defense purposes or offensive tactical purposes or just ruling the world purposes. But anyone thinks, hey,
Yeah.
if I control this computer, then I'll control everything.
I think that these guys have borrowed from a lot of sources. It's eclectic in the sense that you get a little bit of Mission Impossible
Yeah.
on the AI front. You get a lot of James Bond. We're going to take elements from this movie and this franchise and
Yep.
this. The mission goes awry there. She has to regroup. They fight. The heart gets hacked. It just gets silly. They have another fight sequence. Aaliyah Bhatt gets betrayed by Jamie Dornan and left for dead. She gets recruited by Gal Gadot to work with her to kind of save the day. They have a big fight sequence. She saves the day. And then at the end of the movie, it's a next mission. And now Aaliyah Bhatt's working for Gal Gadot. And of course, they do that cheeky line, which is, don't get out of the van, which is exactly where we started the movie. The end. I'm not being purposefully vague. This is just the most generic standard spy thriller you could think of.
Let's talk about the good. What is good about this show? I mean, this is a Netflix movie. This isn't something that's been released in cinemas. I mean, you're intended to watch it on your own sofa with some family.
So first of all, production value is fantastic. It looks great. Yep. The action sequences, not maybe mind-blowing, but in terms of visual appeal, very good. I loved that fight sequence on the blimp. Yep. I love the concept of this, and we kind of talked about it when we talked about Mission Impossible. Why is the artificial intelligence stored on a submarine when it should be in a satellite somewhere?
Yep.
And in this case, the artificial intelligence is on a plane that's 80,000 feet in the air. It can only be accessed by the space shuttle. So I thought that was good.
That's right. Yep.
I thought that, skydiving sequence where she saves Aaliyah Bhatt, I thought that was thrilling. So you can't fault the movie for the action sequences.
A lot of locations.
I mean, a lot of locations.
Frankly, random and unnecessary, but we start in the Alps. This is a very famous resort. Then have something in London, although don't really see much of London. Then we go to Lisbon, Portugal. Then we're in Senegal after the blimp crashes. We end up in Iceland. All totally random. Probably could have, just shaken the magic 8-ball and come up with 4 different locations that would have been equally plausible. But you can see, again, Netflix is trying to make something that's pretty compelling. As you mentioned, the action sequences for a Netflix movie are pretty fine.
Yep.
But what falls flat? Where is this movie falling flat? I think it's plot.
Oh, plot 100%.
Yeah.
And I also think it's casting.
Oh, casting? Wow. Where?
I think I've been very effusive in my praise for Gal Gadot, but I also think she's kind of flat. I think she worked really well as Wonder Woman because she was playing a woman who was literally out of her place in the first Wonder Woman. The fish out of water. She's a little cardboardy. She's a little stiff. She's a little awkward. She doesn't know customs. She doesn't understand how the world works. I think that worked really well for her.
She's aloof. As a superhero, it's okay to be aloof. If you're the member of a team, it just comes off as a little bit wooden, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's weird because it's hard to see her as an aloof, very stiff person. And within that first 30 minutes where she's introduced as this bookish, I'm going to stay in the van type of character, it didn't work for me. As someone on the squad, I wouldn't buy it that that's what she's doing.
Yeah, I agree.
She seemed at her most natural when she's flying down the side of a mountain with a parachute.
Can I tell you where I see her? The character she plays in Red Notice is actually, I think, her sweet spot. She is not bookish, right? She is not
super
aloof,
elegant.
But she's also not, all my respect for her, I know she can do action sequences in real life. She could be involved in a fracas and she'd be a little bit tougher than she looks. But she is not the person throwing roundhouses and kicking people and She is very, very thin. She may be kind of strong and tough, but I thought that her Red Notice character is her, which is, hey, I'm tough, I'm intelligent, I'm elegant, I'm shrewd, I'm using all of that. I'm not afraid to like take a fall or to be pushed around, but I'm also not the person that can take on a gang of 5 people and beat all their asses.
And even if she were,
Yeah.
I think she's the type who'd be like, I'd rather just get my underlings to do it. I'd rather just shoot you.
I agree.
Why waste all that energy, time, and effort to punch a guy in the face?
That's right.
When I could just pull out a gun and shoot you in the face.
Please, if you haven't listened to our Red Notice review, it's a good idea to listen to that. But that's the character which I think she portrays the best. You're absolutely right, that she does not come off as a bookish, hey, I'm just a computer expert. No one buys that. And 2, I have to say, despite the fact that she can do physical stunts, I don't see her as like taking out like this group of like 6 operatives single-handedly. I always find those things to be unrealistic, and with her, particularly so. That's not who she is.
She was great for that same reason in the Fast and Furious franchise, where she was the sexy, deadly assassin type who's very efficient. She wasn't the brawler. That was firmly Michelle Rodriguez's trope, whereas Gal Gadot is like, listen, I can take you down if I need to with my fists.
Yeah.
But I'm just not going to bother because it's a waste of my time and energy and efforts.
Yeah, I agree. So I didn't like that Alpine scene because I thought it was just a little bit nuts. I didn't like the introduction to the heart, and I didn't like that fight scene. But I thought, for example, when she was on the blimp, that was very believable. I believe that she can crash into things and hold on. I believe that she can run and jump and dive and catch a rope. I believe that she can skydive and have a hard fall. All of that, I think, is her sweet spot, but not physical throwing punches and roundhouses and kicking and taking down a whole troop and like body slamming them and
that
like
fight sequence in the Lisbon safe house.
No way.
It didn't make sense. And again, with all due respect to Gal Gadot, it's not exactly fun to watch her punch and beat up Jamie Dornan either.
No.
In fact, of all the bad guys, the most, let's say, satisfying kill was the one where she's on the motorcycle and she's able to take out the guy behind her also on the motorcycle. I buy that she's a kick-ass motorcycle rider and that she's able to dodge and weave out of incoming traffic and then use the environment around her because she's smart and she's capable and that she can dive from a moving motorcycle onto a truck. Also believable. But, you know, Jamie Dornan's not exactly a small guy either. And to see her physically brutalize the guy, again, I'm not saying she can't do it. I just don't buy, like, you got to choose the trope. And if you want that to be the trope of the character, that's absolutely fine. But then Gal Gadot's not your girl.
I've always thought of fight scenes like this. And I think the Bourne Identity is a very good baseline for me. You have to assume that everyone within like this special unit has basically equal training. And that's why I thought those Jason Bourne fight scenes where like a special agent was sent after Bourne from the Bourne program. One of the reasons those were so compelling was that they were very, very equal. About the same size, same strength, same motivation, same training level, right? And I think for all of those, Jason Bourne only escaped because that other girl, I forget her name, like smashed something on the dude.
Yeah, Julia Stiles, that's right.
Julia Stiles like helped him, right?
And any victory was always by the skin of his teeth.
Yes. Could have lost.
Yes,
right? Absolutely. And that was just one person. I would expect that if Jamie Dornan and Gal Gadot are in the same MI6 group, that they have equal training, he should be stronger than her. He should be able to beat her in a hand-to-hand combat.
I would expect so too.
What did you think of the rest of the MI6 team? Because I think one of the weak points of this movie was the composition of that MI6 team. Okay,
Yeah.
Dornan was solid, Gadot was solid. Bailey was very, very weak.
Weird as well, right? Like
Yeah.
there was this element of he has a crush on her, but he's not, he had a couple of furtive looks at her. It didn't seem to be going anywhere. I don't know. And I mean,
like even when they're driving in the van, remember he did like this thing where he kind of stopped short and put out like his hand. I thought that was like a Seinfeldian flirt. So I thought he was weird. I thought that Yang was kind of weird. Like if you're going to be in the MI6 team, you should all be like super, super serious and professional. They were kind of like dancing at the safe house, and then they had like this ambush, and then the whole thing I thought came across as like really, really weird for an MI6 highly trained team of operatives.
I felt like that was the filmmakers trying to give them a personality.
Yeah.
But I think it worked against them because it was the wrong personality.
I agree. I like that Jamie Dornan shot both of them. And I thought that the way that he infiltrated the heart was very clever in terms of like injecting something into her. But I thought it was a little bit strange that like she knew it. I think there could have been like a better way that, he would have drugged her and then like injected that little thing into her and she wouldn't have known about it until it was too late. What did you think about the heart and the concept of the heart? Having been through this in Mission Impossible, what do you think about this?
So again, timely, but it didn't do anything for me.
I thought it was too quantitative. 97% chance of success if you turn left. Now, it decreases to this percent if you turn right. I thought it was too quantitative, like decision tree. Yeah. I think it would have been better in saying, hey, we've got this really great computer. It augments our team. It still has a few quirks. It's not entirely reliable. It doesn't tell you exactly when to turn left and turn right, but it identifies kind of themes that we should be following. I think that's a more compelling narrative. The agents are a little bit skeptical of the instructions being given to them. Their handler is telling them, look, you've got to, follow this blindly. And then there's a few examples where it's not really working, like the ambush, for example, in Lisbon, or even the example in the Alps where she's like, great, I got to the bottom of the hill. How am I supposed to get up now? Like you told me to go to the bottom. How am I supposed to get up now in time to meet my team? Like it could have had like some glitches. And then the end resolution could have been kind of this compromise, which is, hey, we agree we can't rely blindly on this machine. It is definitely a tool to help us with our decision-making and add some objectivity to our missions. But no longer are we just going to follow this yes or no. Like we've got to like have a little bit of like collaboration or oversight. I thought that would have been kind of a better message. But just this, hey, the heart says do this. Hey, the heart says do this. Hey, the heart says do this. But it was regularly missing like major issues. I thought that made the technology less compelling as a MacGuffin.
My notes were that the percentage / odds of success on paper, it's a cool gimmick. But I thought that the implementation I thought was ridiculous because this isn't a game of poker, right? Where you can calculate every odd based on what the river is showing, where we know what the opponent's hands are. You can't calculate the odds of success and failure on that basis because that's not how life works. There's too many variables. Even for a quantum computer, too many variables. Did you watch Ocean's 13?
You bet I did.
Do you remember the quantum computer in Ocean's 13 and how what the computer did was it looked at the heart rates of the winners. It looked at the odds of success of the things to determine whether each win was genuine or if someone was cheating. Like it was the next generation of determining a genuine winner and who's a cheater at a casino.
Yeah.
I thought something like that would be a little bit more appropriate where the computer is analyzing intangibles, not every possible scenario. Because when you looked at that computer screen, the holographic interface is showing out all the different routes that she could take on the ski path down. It looked cool as a concept,
Well, obviously the fastest path is straight down.
It's straight down. So why is it telling you to go straight through a forest on the right? Like it didn't make any sense. What I thought would have been cool would have been like, oh, the computer starts analyzing the snowmobiles, the other skiers, and sees their heart rates. And then it's like, oh, this guy is an amateur. He's going to hold you down. That's why you have to go this way. You have to go this way. That I think would have been a little bit more plausible.
By the way, just out of curiosity, how is the heart getting all this information?
That was another question altogether. Like, where are the cameras that he's getting all this real-time info? Again, a lot of cool concepts on paper, but the moment you do, you don't even need to do a deep dive, a shallow dive on this, everything starts falling apart like a house of cards. Pun fully intended, because what's her code name? The Nine of Hearts. What's her handler's code name? The Jack of Hearts. We know that there's other suits.
The kings, we also know the four kings.
The four kings. This is another very transparent effort by Netflix to set up a world in which they can build a number of sequels. And we saw this, hilariously enough, exactly with Gal Gadot in Red Notice, where she was the quote-unquote bishop.
Yep, she was
and you bishop. And I predicted that, hey, on a chessboard, there are two bishops.
Right.
And guess what? There's also a king. There's also a queen. There are two rooks, pawns. There's going to be at least one sequel, if not more. And surprise, surprise, they're working on the sequel already.
The plot for me is just so weird. And I think it was unnecessarily convoluted. I mean, it could have been this MI6 team would have been kind of like the test team for the heart. I don't think that they needed to make Gal or Rachel Stone. I don't think they needed to make her kind of like this plant within MI6. And then Jamie's also plant within MI6, which makes you just wonder, like, what is the vetting process?
At MI6, yeah.
Right? Like, it would have been better if this was like, hey, this is a special unit. We're testing this out. And Jamie's like, hey, wait a second. Why don't I steal this? I've been screwed by MI6 before. I've lost my team.
Great idea.
Right? Like, I'm tired of MI6 playing God with like my team's lives. I'm taking this.
Wonderful idea. So what you do is you go to like a bunch of different intelligence agencies around the world. You have one guy who's like an outcast, right? So Jamie Dornan's from MI6. You've got a CIA operative who also lost his team in the field, and he's the only survivor. So you get a bunch of disparate characters from a bunch of disparate agencies who all have lost their crews. And then it becomes believable because they each have an axe to grind because they believe that their agency screwed them. That my team died because MI6 didn't give me the resources, or the CIA didn't give me the resources. And so they're banding together, you know, they present themselves as the good guys, and one of them is going to try to screw the whole team, or as a group, they band together and like, let's just steal this for ourselves and we'll create our own super team of bad guys.
Yeah. I think if they really wanted to turn this into a sequel, that they should not have had Jamie Dornan die at the end.
Yeah.
And I think they should have found that like he kept a copy, or he had like some amount of code that he was able to download, and he can create like
the
kind of a
version.
replica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Knight Rider, right? Where we saw the bad kit and the good kit.
Oh my God. But that's actually compelling now. If you would have a sequel and the two AIs are kind of like squaring off against each other, trying to like.
That's a fun concept because that's exactly what everyone's talking about, right? Like, oh, AI is going to be Skynet. Yeah. Well, do it.
Right.
I have one AI versus a good AI versus the bad AI fight each other.
Right. That's not a bad sequel for me. Fun. Is if you now have kind of like Dornan's AI that he's at least copied she thinks, hey, I got rid of him. He lives and he's got a copy of the code. And now it's kind of him against Kea and Rachel Stone in the next episode, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we're not willing to unleash the AI. Like the AI says, okay, like set off a bomb here and cause a diversion. And the AI is just like, whatever carnage you need to do, the end justifies the means, right? Yeah. And Dornan's willing to do that with his.
Yeah.
And Gal and Kea are not. They're like, whoa, we're not going to do that to win. And the heart is saying, hey, if you want to win, and you want to beat my counterpart, this is what you have to do. And Dornan's willing to do anything, right?
Yeah.
He'll set off bombs, false flags, like human prisoners, human shields. Like he's willing to do it all because his AI is telling him this is how you will win. And that's a better battle then, right?
They finally are like, well, the only way we can win is to unleash the good AI. And this is, have you remember that old movie Stealth, where you had the AI controlling the planes?
So good. Jamie Foxx,
Jessica Biel, and Josh Lucas. But yes, where he's finally like, fine, I'm going to let you go. Like, I can't do this on my own, so I need your help. And then all of a sudden the tides turn.
Hearthstone could have been, the plot is what sank it. And this is where Netflix fell into what we've called the Amazon fallacy, which is just throwing more money, forever known as the Amazon fallacy, throwing more money and more locations at the problem doesn't give you a better film.
Speaking of which, guess what the reported budget of this movie is?
Oh
Netflix refused to reveal official numbers, but an insider claims that this is the budget. Take a random guess.
200 million.
300 million.
I mean, it's wrong. Almost never do I take a moral view about something like this, but it is just wrong that you spend 300 on this when probably you could have the same movie for 200 million, because there's only, Gal is definitely a big name actress. Dornan is not terribly expensive.
Not in that same level, yeah.
And everyone else is cheap.
You didn't need half those locations. If rumors are to be believed, it's an expensive movie. And that's why I say this is one of Netflix's last in that sense, because they had made a rash of deals starting all the way back with Ryan Reynolds and Six Underground, where they were just like, let's just throw a couple $100 million to like these 7 actors each, and let's get them to make a ton of movies for us. I'm not saying they were all bad movies. Some of them were fine. I mean, they were perfect Netflix movies. This is the perfect Netflix movie, which is great effects, reasonably well-known people, so attempt at a plot, but at $300 million, I mean, this is Mission Impossible territory in terms of budget.
I really want to see a breakdown of Portugal car chase scene, $50 million, blimp scene, $20 million. Like, I want to see that breakdown. And then I would look at that movie and be like, look, get rid of the Portugal car chase scene. You're telling me I need to spend $50 million on the car chase scene? Get rid of it.
This doesn't need to be in Reykjavik. Do it in Scotland.
I agree. But I also have to say, Netflix is weird like this, because if you look at the other things that are popular and trending on Netflix, Johnny Manziel documentary, Florida Gators documentary, Amber Heard, Johnny Depp documentary, all these things are super inexpensive to make.
Yeah.
And those are all quality, and those are all doing fairly well. And then they spend a huge amount of money on this. For that 300 million, and we've said the same thing with Amazon, you could definitely make 2 very decent movies for 150 each. But I think 300, it's not even the money, it's a terrible decision. If you want to spend that on Mission Impossible and have a box office revenue, there's some math that says that's a good decision. I'll agree with you. I may say I don't think you're going to get those numbers, but at least you've got a plan saying, if I invest X, I'm going to get Y. For Netflix, as you know, it's not really the same math. You spend 300 million and a lot of people watch it. For what?
Yeah. At most, it's for a small percentage of retention. But if the quality is this bad, this isn't helping your retention numbers at all.
No. But then you should make it a series, and it's Heart of Stone series. And instead of having 1 and the sequel, then it's season 1, season 2, season 3. And then at least you've got like a retention plan, because this could have then been an 8-episode series. For 300 million, you can definitely make 8 decent episodes, just like Citadel, right?
Citadel was 6 for 300 million. Yeah.
Because then at least I stick around for 3 months. If I just watch this, it's over, then what? What's the retention plan? If you're going to make a movie like this, make it realistic and capture my imagination. But then they kept walking me through these things like, oh, wait, they've got a sniper. And then they like pull up his bio. Oh, he's very well accomplished. What bio do you have on a sniper? Like, is he on LinkedIn? What, what database are you pulling this from? Right? It's ridiculous. It's enough to say he's a sniper and he's got this type of weapon.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
He will be able to make that shot.
Yep.
You don't have to say like, oh, well,
his Call of Duty numbers are fantastic. What are you doing?
Yes. I mean, it's just ridiculous. That's what I really am pining for is I love the idea of having an AI that's dictating military decisions. I want it to be realistic. And I don't think you need a Gal Gadot to do that. I think Jamie Dornan was absolutely good in his character, and you can have someone else play Gal's character. If money is an issue or timing is an issue, make it a 10-season series, and let's have this be your calling card then, Netflix.
Yeah. We harp on a lot about this because remember, at the end of the day, these are also public companies.
And I care.
Yeah, well, of course. So look, there's two elements, right? Let's say the fan element, which is where most of our criticisms come from, which is, hey, we're fans of movies. We want to see good movies. We want to see good TV shows. Yeah. This is neither of those things. That's one. But the other element is we are also like professionals, right? We understand what it means to be a publicly traded company. There's a duty of care, not just artistically, but also fiscally. And this is not exhibiting that duty of care.
Yep. Okay. Do you have anything else to say about Heart of Stone?
Yeah, it's a skip.
I'm not going to fight you on that. I think it's a low mooch. I know that that's a different category and it's not really fair to say low mooch, but we both agree it's definitely not a must subscribe. We both agree no way. No way. I think if you've got a friend or a brother and you've got nothing to do and they give you their password, go ahead and watch it. It will not be the worst use of 2 hours of your time. Pete, it sounds like you're saying, hey, don't even waste your 2 hours. There's better stuff that you can watch for 2 hours.
Yeah. And I would even argue that, for all its faults, like Red Notice was probably better than this. At least Red Notice had some funny quips and banter scenes with Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. This didn't even have that.
I have to say between Red Notice, Gray Man, and Heart of Stone, I would probably choose Red Notice 1, Gray Man 3, Heart of Stone 2. The only benefit I see of Heart of Stone was I have to say the idea was a little bit interesting. At least it made me think a little bit. I thought Gray Man had nothing interesting in it. Oh, you know what I liked about Gray Man? I like Chris Evans. He was in Gray Man, right?
He was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, he was fantastic.
He was a really good bad guy.
Yeah, he was a great villain. It was also the worst in the terms of it was the typical one super agent versus 1,000 bad guys. Yeah. They never get hit by bullets. Every time they shoot with like a 9mm, it's a headshot, even if the person has full body armor. It was like endlessly boring for me in terms of the fight sequences because it was just mass amounts of bad guys shooting at one good guy. And Ryan Gosling and Ana de Armas would never miss. And no matter how pinned down they were, they always got out of it. I thought that was just exhaustingly boring, to be honest.
I get that.
But Chris Evans, yes, was a fantastic, fantastic bad guy.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our Heart of Stone recap. Do we have time for the newly released Depp V Heard docuseries?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this briefly. I saw it. At your recommendation, or not recommendation, but at your behest. What did you think? You've seen 2 of the 3 episodes. I've seen
2 of 3. I thought this was a very good public service by Netflix because at least the 2 episodes I've seen so far, it took a very objective kind of side-by-side view of both perspectives. And I thought this was such a widely covered event, but there was so much misinformation and snippets. I think it was notorious for kind of like the social media snippets or the social media memes that it created. And a lot of people formed very, very strong opinions based on snippets of testimony without any context. And I thought Netflix, kind of surprisingly, did a very objective kind of quasi-journalistic overview of, hey, here's her perspective and here's his perspective, and this is how they overlap, this is how they don't match. And oh, by the way, here's some of the context for some of the things that you've heard. So for example, one example is, and I think I've seen a lot of memes about this, Amber Heard's lawyer, when questioning Johnny Depp, says, didn't you pour yourself a mega pint of wine?
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed about it. And when I saw that snippet, I kind of laughed along and said, what a stupid thing to say. But then I thought the Netflix documentary did a very good job of saying, the lawyer didn't just make this word up. This was Johnny Depp's word from prior testimony. He was just reiterating the same thing. In a day and age of very low journalistic integrity, I thought that was a very, very good job to put into context in the background of why a certain word was using and kind of de-escalate the memes that were created around it.
Yeah, I agree. I am less, let's say, positive on this because you're only 2 episodes in, but I don't know if you've noticed, there's very few experts on the matter. Most of this is like, most of the clips are all YouTube podcasts and TikToks, all 3. And none of them are objective experts. These are like, I'll give you an example. They had Brian Callen on like several times. Brian Callen, in my opinion, is like a 2-bit bully comedian who's not even a good comic, who I've known as like an aggressive bully. And what's he doing talking about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp? And why is he presented relatively prominently on this? Like, why would I listen to or accept the word of a stand-up comedian on this? Where are the clinical psychologists? Where are the police? Where are criminologists? Where are judges and other lawyers who can actually break this down? I don't need to see social media influencers and influencer experts, quote unquote, like these guys, who do these reaction videos on as lawyers and reaction videos as doctors. Whenever I see them on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, my first reaction always is, if you're a good doctor or a good lawyer, you don't have time to be making social media videos on Instagram and YouTube, because you should be at your successful law practice or job doing that. Like, it makes no sense to me.
I think one of the points that this docu-series was trying to make is that this was not really a legal trial. And I think they said it a few times, which is this was really just this long 2-week PR rager between the two of them. If someone's at fault, you could say the judge is at fault for either allowing the cameras in. Or you can say they're at fault for saying, hey, this is about defamation. Let's stick to the issues and let's not get into this wide-ranging airing everybody's dirty laundry and trying to make the other person look bad. I think that's part of the reason that there's an absence of legal analysis. There was no like, should this be allowed into evidence or not into evidence?
You're right.
It just devolved into nothing but a made for social media circus. But I have to say, if I'm just commenting not on the case, but on the documentary, I thought that Netflix did a relatively good job of trying to just give an objective overview of kind of both sides. I haven't seen the last episode, but at least now I feel like it's not taking sides. It's presenting both people as somewhat ugly and saying, hey, you decide who you like more, who you believe more, and most importantly, was there defamation or not defamation?
On that regard, I totally agree with you. What they did very well over 3 hours is they basically distilled 6 weeks worth of YouTube and TikTok memes and videos and quote unquote professional, absolutely not professional analysis on these social media platforms. I think this was actually fought more on social media than it was in a court.
Yeah.
I also strongly believe that no matter what the judge said, I have very little faith that the jurors were actually
Impartial.
abstaining from social media.
Yeah.
It would have been impossible to. So I don't know.
If you were hired, I'll give you two scenarios. You're hired as the chief, I don't know, like your role is to make sure that when Johnny Depp goes into courtroom, that he's looking like someone who's going to be sympathetic to the jury.
Sure.
How did you find like what he was wearing? Like how his hair was? Like, what did you think? Like, would that pass your test, or would you say, dude, you can't go in like that? Wear a normal tie, wear a normal suit.
So here's two sides of that same coin,
Yeah.
right? On one hand,
Yeah.
if he's wearing a standard charcoal suit
Yeah.
with a white button-down shirt and a plain black tie or a blue tie and looking like a politician and not a celebrity,
Yeah.
I think that sends the message that, oh, this is a little bit more serious and there could be a chance that he loses, right? And that's why he's trying to take this seriously.
Yeah.
On the other hand, by dressing as a celebrity, which he was, right? He was wearing, I don't want to say flamboyant, but at the same time, certainly more on the side of business casual than on the side of business formal. He had his colored lenses on.
Yeah.
And maybe he needs colored lenses, but I don't think that's true. I think he could have just worn normal glasses if he needs those.
I agree.
Right? So I think he also just perpetuated that I'm a celebrity, dude.
Yeah.
And like, this is how I dress all the time. This is what I look like. And I'm not going to change who I am because I believe that strongly in my case.
Yeah. I agree with you. In my mind, I have no idea whether this is true. I'm totally making this up, so don't take it the wrong way, listeners. But I would have expected that version one, he showed up in like boots and jeans and some type of like button-down shirt and said, well, I'm dressing professionally. And someone's like, no, that's not going to fly. Put on a suit. He comes in a 3-piece suit and some type of like weird gold tie. He's like, how about this? That's the best I can do. And the guy's like, well, yeah, that'll probably be okay. Like you definitely
gotta
look
lose the cowboy hat.
Yeah, you definitely look professional and respectful. It's definitely not the suit I would have chosen for you, but I agree. You're not a banker. You probably don't wear suits and ties any longer. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. What about Amber Heard and what?
I mean, she looked like a paralegal half the time, I gotta say.
I mean, there's been so many memes about her hair. There's been so many memes about like her suits. I have to say, I'm a little bit surprised. She could look like, I guess she definitely didn't want to like flaunt her sexuality, but I thought she could have dressed conservatively, but like her hair in some areas, and it's hard to like criticize a woman's hair, but like it was really weird in some ways, right? Wear it up, wear it down, but like what's this half up, half down stuff? It's strange. Like one of her suits, she really did look like she was just wearing like a man's suit in some cases. I thought that her presentation was overall super weird, even compared to Johnny Depp's.
Between the two of them, just based on looks, it clearly looked like he was the celebrity and she was the plaintiff.
Yeah.
Even though it was the other way around.
Yeah. Ugly situation.
Yeah, look,
all
the
the way
other
around.
reason I wasn't a fan of this, so I gave this a skip for two main reasons. One, if you're a documentary, I personally want to see more professional analysis, or at least qualified analysis. I don't need to see Brian Callen's face on a YouTube podcast talking about it. I'm sorry, but like he's a nobody when it comes to legal anything.
You're totally right.
It's the same reason I criticize Joe Rogan so heavily. I'm sorry, dude. You're a podcaster with some level of expertise and experience in MMA and a celebrity. That's it. I will believe you when you say that this takedown on MMA was good. Anything else, especially with COVID or with all that other nonsense medical stuff that he's been spouting, go take a long walk off a short pier. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
I don't need to see that. So that's the first reason. The second reason is, and this is where, you know, I don't want to spoil it for you, but this is why the third episode I think is actually probably going to be the best episode for you.
Okay.
This was an ugly case. No
Yeah.
one comes out of this looking good. And I think ultimately, whoever you sided with is the person you probably liked more. Whether you like Amber Heard more or whether you like Johnny Depp more is who you're going to believe more. But what you can't deny is that neither side looked good coming out of this. Johnny Depp looks like an asshole. Amber Heard looks like an asshole. Both of them look awful. And nobody likes their laundry aired publicly. When it was done and dusted, I was kind of glad because I was just like, look, I'm done with these two people. Like, I don't want to see them as anything beyond as actors. I don't want to hear about them in their personal lives because it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. I saw, though, there is a little bit of a different standard for men and women in this trial, which is, Depp, who did air his dirty laundry, for some reason, it seems when you're a man and you do that, you come across as more honest and like relatable.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a woman and do that, you come across as more crazy or unstable.
And absolutely.
That's an unfair thing, but it's fair to draw that conclusion from this, which is not about right or wrong or who had more or worse, but generally Depp seemed to come across as kind of like, oh, he's just like us. He must be telling the truth. Look how open he is about all this bad stuff, And that seemed to be like relatable to people. It had like, instead of pushing people away, it seemed to draw them to him and his narrative. Whereas Amber Heard, whether it's because of how she did it, the same standard doesn't apply to women. Whenever she kind of conceded to doing something not great, it was like this, aha, see, or that's on you. I can see from her perspective how that was taken as very unfair and a double standard. But again, the whole thing was pretty ugly. I don't think there's, in the great scheme of things, any winners. It was just kind of two people that really kind of diminished each other in this whole.
And again, it was about a personal relationship between two people. Like, this has no impact on society.
Yeah.
This isn't the Flint water crisis. This isn't, the war on terror. This isn't corruption on Wall Street. This isn't any of that. At the end of the long day, who gives a damn? Two superstar celebrities, two millionaires who live in their own worlds and have no real concept of what the average working person is going through. They're fighting with each other. I guess that's where a little bit of the sick pleasure comes from the average person, right? Like, you get, they're just like us. They also have problems in relationships. That's fine. But I mean, like, at the end of the day, if I'm watching a documentary, I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about people or about something that I care about. And in the grand scheme of things, I like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Great. But is it any of my business what happened between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard? Not really.
You know what would be a good documentary then? The next one would be a documentary on the history of defamation cases in the US and the UK. I think the UK tabloids, famously tough, and generally they get away with saying a lot of things.
Yeah.
Even if they're a little bit wrong, as long as they're not like entirely fabricated. I think we've seen that with the royal family.
Yeah, the burden of proof is so different in the UK versus in the US.
The royal family, I think, in the UK is a little bit different. They're a little bit more perceived as kind of like fair game or public sport. But even, like Depp's case started in the UK, right? Where they called him a wife beater.
Yeah.
And he said, like, that's not fair. And he lost that case. I can understand those are very big statements to make. In the US, it seems like defamation is like a lower burden for the plaintiff to say, look, they've defamed me. And I think that would be a really interesting case because journalistic integrity is really an important quality. I think we've gotten away from it a little bit. And there's a very fine line between kind of like the freedom of speech that generally you see in the US and the UK, and saying something that is unfounded, but will have like a dramatic impact on someone's, reputation without any means for them to really
Yeah.
fight back. Even if Johnny Depp wins that wife beater defamation case, it doesn't undo the damage that it's caused, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you may say, look, he's still rich, he's still fit. And all that's kind of true. I mean, but still, like, those words can have a big impact. So I think that would be an interesting documentary. And you could add like a little bit more legal commentary to that by explaining kind of the history of those things. I think there was another one in the US, the Gawker website with Hulk Hogan. Remember that one?
That Peter Thiel financed. Yeah.
That Peter Thiel financed.
Yeah. That was a huge one, right? I mean, Gawker shut down because of it.
Yeah. They made a demonstratively false statement, right?
Yep. That, by the way, is a documentary I would watch in a heartbeat. You're absolutely right. This concept of what you're saying, this libel thing, this defamation thing, and that also has strong, let's say, societal impact, because that's not just something that affects celebrities, because obviously we see that with celebrities the most, but especially in today's day and age, where you have that Me Too movement, where you have a lot of allegations of sexual harassment, a lot of allegations of rape. Some are legitimate. And again, I'm not saying don't believe victims, do believe victims, but there has to be an element of burden of proof, right? There has to be a basis for that, or a foundation for that. And most people don't know what that is. So a lot of people get absolutely screwed. Victims and alleged victims alike. It hits both sides. So I think I'm sure there probably is a documentary about something like this out there, but certainly not one that's gotten my attention. Let's put it that way.
I think that documentary can be made to be a little bit more appealing to like a wider audience. And it can, I don't want to say dumb down, but it can simplify some of the legal concepts, and also have like a message in terms of, what is the underlying effect of this? What people are not coming forward because they're afraid to say something, or what people are making outlandish statements because they're not afraid that there's going to be any consequences for saying something that can't be proven untrue, Yuck.
What did you think of this? Was this a mooch for you? Is this a must subscribe? Is it a skip?
In terms of the content, I think it's a skip. Like the concept of rubbernecking, when you see like a car accident and you can't look away. I think that's all it's good for. But the one mooch element I think that it has is that to date, I think it's the first time that something attempting to be objective has been out there. And I think that in a trial that everybody is aware of and everybody has an opinion of, I don't think that but a fractional percentage of those folks are basing their opinion on anything more than a few cherry-picked TikTok or Instagram memes or stories or something. At least this, I think, is attempting to be objective and put them side by side and saying, hey, we're not, maybe the third episode changes this, but says, we're not saying who's right or wrong. We're not saying who should win or lose, but at least listen to these two folks side by side. Whatever choice you make, whoever you support, that's fine. But at least like have a better set of information in front of you and not just base it on one or two social media memes. So I think from that perspective, it offers something, but it's definitely not a must subscribe. I would not watch it again, but it does have that one redeeming element, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Again, it's a skip for me, but primarily because I think it adds very little to public discourse. And as a documentary, it doesn't fulfill my own set of standards for what a documentary or docuseries would have. But I fully agree with you. It is objective, which, to be fair, is one of the most important aspects of a documentary.
Yeah. That's kind of the funny thing about Netflix, is that they've got so many of these relatively inexpensive documentaries, and then they counterbalance that with the 300 million Heart of Stone, right?
Good for Gal Gadot. She deserves to get paid every cent that she gets. So good for her. I just think as a company, they need to start making more fiscally responsible decisions.
Yeah. All right. So that's our Netflix overview of this week, huh?
That's right. But are there any other Netflix shows that you are keen on watching, or you want us to watch for you? Or you side with Amber, you side with Johnny, you side with Gal Gadot? Who do you support? Reach out, let us know. Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com, or as always, like this video, leave a comment below, and don't forget to hit that bell and subscribe to our channel.
Okay, everyone. Keith, thank you as always. Great episode today. Always a pleasure. We've got big stuff coming up next week as well. And until that time, we are Ethan and Pete from Films and Stuff. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.